Jess, I know it's 3 a.m. I know. Just don't hang up. Give me 2 minutes. Please. I've been lying here for 3 hours trying to convince myself I'm overreacting. I made tea I didn't drink. I reorganized my bookshelf by color, which I've never done in my life. I found myself Googling. How do you know if you like someone at 2 in the morning, like I'm 17 years old? And Jess, I'm 31. So I think we both know I'm not overreacting. His name is Daniel Rhys. He works in the analytics department on the 4th floor, which is not my floor, which is not a coincidence. Or, I don't know. Maybe it is a coincidence. I'm not thinking clearly right now. He's been working on our team's quarterly project for 3 months. 3 months, Jess. I have been in the same shared workspace as this man for 93 days, and I only figured out what was actually happening approximately 4 hours ago when I was in the middle of eating leftover pasta and completely unprovoked started thinking about the specific way he says my name. He says it differently than everyone else does. I noticed that 6 weeks ago and filed it away under relevant, and tonight it came back out of the filing cabinet and threw itself directly at my face. Okay, I need to start from the beginning. This is going to take a while. Are you comfortable? Do you need to get water? Get water. I'll wait. Okay, good. Here's the thing about Daniel Rhys. He does not like most people. This is not a criticism. I say it factually, the way you'd say he's tall, or he takes his coffee black. It's just a thing that's true about him. He is polite to everyone. He is helpful when asked. He shows up to team meetings on time and leaves exactly when they end. But there's this quality to him, this stillness, that keeps people at a certain distance without him ever having to say a word. He's been described as intense. He's been described as hard to read. Priya in marketing told me last November that she finds him borderline, hostile, which I thought was insane at the time. I don't think it's insane anymore. I think Priya just didn't know him. And here's the thing. Here is the actual thing, Jess. He softened around me. Not always, not dramatically, but he did. And I noticed every single time. The first time I registered it, really registered it, not just filed it away and moved on, was about 2 months in. We were in the big conference room on 4, not a formal meeting. One of those working sessions where everyone drags their laptops in and half the people are simultaneously on other calls and nobody's fully present. The kind of meeting where you could disappear into your own thoughts for 20 minutes and nobody would notice. Daniel was at the whiteboard. He'd drawn out this whole framework for the data segmentation problem we'd been stuck on. Columns, arrows, 2 colors of marker. It was actually elegant, the kind of thinking that makes a complicated thing suddenly look obvious, which is harder than it sounds. I said, and I remember this exactly because it started a thing. I said, that third column is doing something the other 2 aren't. I didn't mean it as a compliment. I was genuinely trying to figure out what I was looking at. It just came out observational. He turned around. And here's the part that matters, Jess. Here's the actual part. He didn't just look at me the way you look at someone who said something mildly interesting. He looked at me the way you look at someone when you want to know what they say next. There's a difference. I've been in enough meetings to know the difference. He said, say more about that. Not what do you mean? Not I'm not sure I follow. Not that slightly defensive thing people do when you question their work. Just say more about that, clean and direct. So I did. I walked him through what I was seeing. The way the third column was essentially a translation layer, a bridge between the raw data and the interpretation. It took maybe 2 minutes. When I finished, the room was quieter than it had been before I started talking. He looked at the board for a long moment. Then he picked up the red marker and added one line, and the whole thing clicked into place. Yes, he said, that's it. Not good point. Not thanks for that. Just, yes. That's it, like we'd arrived somewhere together. I thought about that exchange for the rest of the day. I told myself it was because the work was satisfying. I'm good at that. Rationalizing. The next week, something similar happened. He was debugging a report that wasn't matching the source data, and I was passing through the shared workspace, and he caught my eye and just tilted, his head at the screen. An invitation, a completely silent invitation. I sat down. We worked through it side by side without talking much. At one point, our elbows were almost touching, and neither of us moved away. When we found the error, a misformatted date string, genuinely stupid, he made this quiet sound. Not quite a laugh, something between relief and amusement. And then he looked at me, and for half a second I saw it. This loosening around his eyes, like something very briefly stopped holding itself in place. I looked away first, but I noted it, filed it under something I didn't have a name for yet. You need to understand something about the way Daniel operates in a room, Jess, because otherwise, none of the rest of this makes sense. He's the quietest loud presence I've ever been around. What I mean is, when he doesn't say something, you notice. Everyone does. There are people who can sit in a meeting for an hour and contribute nothing, and it goes unremarked. Daniel goes quiet for 10 minutes, and somehow the whole energy of the room shifts. People start self-editing, cleaning up their language, paying more attention to what they're actually saying. I watched this happen a dozen times before I started understanding it. It's not judgment. That's what people get wrong. Priya thought it was judgment. A lot of people think it's judgment, but I've sat close enough, long enough, to know it's attention. He pays a quality of attention that most people don't. And once you're not saying anything worth listening to, that attention feels like a verdict. So the room's self-edits Except I noticed, and this is the part I filed away for 6 weeks, Jess. This is the part I kept almost thinking about and then not thinking about. I noticed that his silence around me felt different. Not like withholding, not like waiting for something better, more like settling, like he breathed differently when I was the one talking. This sounds insane. I know how it sounds. I'm saying it anyway. There was a Thursday afternoon about 6 weeks in where we ended up being the last two people in the workspace. Everyone else had cleared out for a 3 o'clock meeting, and neither of us was on the invite. We just stayed, both working, not talking. And the silence wasn't uncomfortable. That's the thing I couldn't explain to myself. With most people, even people I like, there's a texture to silence, a slight friction, a background awareness of whether you should say something, fill the space, be more present. With Daniel, that Thursday, there was none of that. I was just working and he was just working, and the room had that particular quality of late afternoon, light, and it felt natural. At some point, he pushed his chair back from the desk and stretched his arms over his head and made a sound like he'd been sitting too long, which he had been, we both had been, and he said, without looking at me, just at the ceiling, "How's the Hendricks account analysis going?" I said, slowly. He said, "Same," and that was the whole conversation. But there was a warmth to it. I don't know how to describe this exactly. There was a warmth in the economy of it, like we'd agreed without discussing it, that we didn't need more words than necessary. 2 weeks later, I overheard him talking to Marcus from the data team. Perfectly pleasant conversation, professional. But the texture was completely different. There was an effort to it, a performance of ease that wasn't ease. I thought, so that's what it looks like when he's trying. And then I thought, which means when he's with me, he's not trying. And then I put that thought in a very locked box and put the box on a very high shelf and went back to my work. That was 5 weeks ago. Tonight the box fell off the shelf. Okay, so this is the elevator thing. I've been building to this. Last month, a Tuesday. End of a very long day. We'd had back-to-back review sessions, and I was running on my third. Coffee and that particular kind of tired where your thoughts come out in the wrong order. I was waiting for the elevator to go down to the lobby, standing there with my bag on my shoulder and my coat half on and mentally calculating whether I had the energy to stop at the grocery store or whether cereal for dinner was a defensible life choice. Daniel came around the corner. He saw me. He kept walking toward the elevator. He pressed the button that I'd already pressed. We waited. The elevator took forever. It always takes forever on that floor. At some point, I became aware that I was aware of him standing 3 feet to my left, and I thought, this is fine. This is a normal amount of awareness of another human being who exists in space near you. The doors opened. We got in. He pressed L. I pressed L. We both laughed at that, the smallest possible laugh. Barely a sound. The doors closed. And then the elevator. Jess, I need you to understand this is a building with infrastructure problems. This is a known issue. Nobody was surprised. The elevator stopped between floors 3 and 2 and made a sound like a machine that has reconsidered its choices, and the lights flickered once and came back. We looked at each other. He said, "This happens." I said, "I know. It usually starts moving again in about 2 minutes." He said, "I know. I've been stuck here before." And then we just stood there. And it was fine. That's the thing that I keep coming back to. It was completely fine. We were stuck in a small metal box between floors at the end of a long day, and there was no awkwardness, no performance of casualness. He leaned his shoulder against the wall and crossed his arms and looked at the floor numbers. And I leaned my shoulder against the opposite wall and looked at the floor numbers, and it was easy. After maybe 40 seconds, he said, without moving, "You pushed back on Gareth in the 2 o'clock." I said, "He was wrong about the segmentation," he said. "He was very wrong." Nobody else said it. I said, "Someone had to." There was a pause. And then he said, very quietly, not making a thing of it, "Yes, someone did, Jess." The way he said that. Not like a compliment. Compliments are performed. There's always a slight upward lilt, a little bit of offer in them. This wasn't like that. It was more like recognition, like was noting something factual, like he'd already thought it and saying it out loud was just confirming something he'd already established to himself. The elevator started moving. We rode down to the lobby. He held the door as I went through the lobby entrance. Outside, we walked in different directions toward different subway lines. He said, "Good night," the way he says my name, a little differently than strictly necessary. I walked 3 blocks before I stopped on the sidewalk in the cold and stood there for a full 30 seconds not moving. I didn't let myself think about why. I really should have let myself think about why. This was 2 weeks ago. I'd stayed late to finish a presentation deck. Not ideal, but the deadline got moved up, and there was nothing to be done about it. Around 7:30, the floor had mostly cleared out. That quiet that big offices get in the evening, all the fluorescent hum and ambient noise drops away, and you can hear the building settling. I didn't notice Daniel was still there until I got up to refill my water bottle. He was at the far end of the shared space. Jacket off, sleeves rolled up, headphones around his neck instead of over his ears, working through something on 2 monitors. I've noticed he uses 2 monitors when he's in deep focus. One display seems like a signal that he's available. 2 displays are the quiet equivalent of a closed door. I refilled my water. I went back to my desk. I kept working. At some point, 8 o'clock, maybe 8:15, I hit a wall. The kind of creative block where you've been staring at the same slide for so long that the words have stopped meaning anything. I pushed back from my desk and stared at the ceiling for a minute. I heard his chair move. A moment later, he appeared at the edge of my workspace, not stepping into it exactly, just present at the boundary. "The deck for Whitmore," he said. I said, "How did you know?" He said, "I saw the brief." Tight turnaround. He paused. Which slide? I turned the laptop so he could see. The problem slide. The one where I needed to show a complicated relationship between three variables without the visual turning into something that looked like a subway map. He stood there and looked at it for maybe 15 seconds. I was watching him think. He has this thing he does when he's processing. He goes very still, not rigid, just settled, like all his energy moves inward. Then he said, flip the hierarchy. The time variable shouldn't be vertical, it should be horizontal, left to right. People's eyes track narrative that way. I looked at the slide. I looked at him. I said, that's obvious. He said, it's always obvious after. I said, you could have started with that. And this is the moment, Jess. This is the one. He smiled. Not a polite smile, not a professional acknowledgement, a real one. Small and sudden and slightly reluctant, like it surprised him. I've seen Daniel be charming. I've seen him be professional. I've seen him be distant and precise and occasionally wry. I have never, in 93 days, seen him smile like he forgot to control it. He pulled the chair from the adjacent empty workspace and sat down next to me. We reworked 3 slides. It took an hour. The entire time, his chair was about 8 inches from mine, and I was acutely, precisely aware of every one of those 8 inches. We didn't talk about anything except the deck. But the way we talked about the deck, the shorthand we developed, the way we'd get halfway through an explanation and the other person would finish it, the easy rhythm of it, felt like something. Felt like evidence of something I wasn't naming. At 9:15, I said I was done. He said he was close. We packed up separately. In the elevator, the same elevator, we rode down without talking. Outside, he turned up his collar against the cold. Good deck, he said. I said, we made it good. He looked at me for a beat. One of those looks that has weight to it. Then he said, yes, and walked toward the subway. I took a cab home. Alone. Told myself the feeling in my chest was just relief that the deck was done. Jess, you're very quiet. Are you still there? Yes, I'm here. I'm listening. Okay, good. There's more. I told you. I told you at the beginning. He says my name differently. My name is not unusual. 2 syllables. Most people say it quickly, functionally, as a word that identifies a person. That's what names are for. I've never thought much about the way people say my name. With Daniel, it's different. I noticed it the first time around week 3. We were in a group discussion, and he needed to hand the conversation to me. One of those standard meeting moments where you say someone's name to bring them in, and he said my name and something about it made me look up. Not in alarm, more like attention had been requested and received. I told myself it was his tone generally, that he brought a certain deliberateness to everything, and names were no exception. I kept noticing it. There's a thing the human brain does. I read about this somewhere. I think it was in a piece about auditory processing, where you can develop what S called a response pattern to a specific voice saying a specific thing. You hear a certain configuration of sounds in a certain register, and your nervous system recognizes it before your conscious mind does. It's why you can hear your name across a crowded room, even when you're not listening for it. I developed a response pattern to Daniel saying my name, not something anyone could see, just a slight interior shift, an orientation. 3 days ago, Friday, the day before the weekend, I've now spent completely unraveling. He was across the workspace on a call. I was focused on something, and I heard him say my name, not to me. He was talking to whoever was on the phone, referencing me in third person, probably updating someone on the project. She ran the analysis, or she caught that, or something professional and ordinary. But he said my name the way he says it when he's talking to me. That same. I don't have a better word for this. That same quality of care. Like my name mattered to him. Like it wasn't just a word that identified a person, but a word he'd thought about. I sat with that for 3 days, Jess. 3 days. I kept trying to disprove it. I ran through every interaction, looking for evidence that I was constructing a narrative where there wasn't one. People do that. I know people do that. You find a pattern, you want it to mean something, and you start reading meaning into things that are just things. But here's what I couldn't explain away: the way his whole body language changes when I walk into a room. Not dramatically, not in a way that anyone watching would notice, just a slight settlement, like something in him exhales, the way he always somehow ends up positioned so he can see where I'm sitting. I started tracking this 2 weeks ago, and I'm right about this, Jess. I'm not imagining it. The way he asks follow-up questions, not just about work. Last week, he asked if I'd seen a documentary I'd mentioned. 3 weeks earlier, in a conversation he wasn't central to, which means he remembered something I said in passing when there was no professional reason to remember it. I thought about that for 45 minutes this evening, and then I started thinking about his name. The way I say his name when I say it to myself, which I apparently say to myself more than I realized. And that's when I made the tea I didn't drink and reorganized the bookshelf and ended up calling you at 3 a.m. Here's what I've been doing, Jess. I need to say it out loud because I think saying it out loud might stop me from doing it. I've been protecting myself by not looking directly at it. I am very good at this. I have apparently developed this into a genuine skill. I see something and I file it sideways. I notice something and I find a rational explanation. And I put the rational explanation where the feeling should go, and then I move on. I have done this for 3 months with a precision that is, honestly, kind of impressive in retrospect. I told myself the whiteboard moment was about the work. It was about the work. I told myself the quiet Thursdays were about finding a compatible working rhythm with a colleague. Lots of people have compatible working rhythms with colleagues. I told myself the elevator was a small kindness of circumstance and nothing more. I told myself the late night with the deck was professional collaboration at its most functional, and I was reading warmth into efficiency. I told myself all of this, and I almost believed it. And then tonight I was sitting in my kitchen eating pasta and thinking about the documentary Question, the one where he remembered something I'd said in passing 3 weeks ago, and something in me went very quiet. Not the anxious kind of quiet, the kind that comes right before you understand something you've been avoiding. I thought he asked that question because he wanted to know, not to be polite, not to make professional small talk. He actually wanted to know. He's been paying attention. He has been paying a specific, directed, personal quality of attention to me for 3 months, and I have been noticing every instance of it and filing it away under irrelevant, because looking at it directly felt too much. I was scared of it. That's the honest answer. I was scared of what it would mean if I looked at it and it was real and I wanted it. Because wanting things that might not be reciprocated is a certain kind of vulnerable. And being wrong about this would be, it's the kind of wrong that would make every Tuesday for the foreseeable future very complicated. So I didn't look. Except tonight something slipped. Tonight my brain had been going for too many hours, and my defenses were low, and I was just sitting there. And I thought about the sound he made when he found the error in the data. That small sound. Not quite a laugh. And I thought about how he looked at the ceiling and said, "How's the Hendricks account going?" And how comfortable the silence was. And I thought about the 8 inches between our chairs and that reluctant smile. And then something in my chest did something I can't describe as anything other than absolutely giving up the pretense. I sat there with my pasta getting cold, and I thought, I am in love with Daniel Rhys. Not I think I might have feelings for. Not I'm developing a slight professional interest that could perhaps become something. I am in love with this man. I have been in love with this man for probably 6 weeks, and I have been filing the evidence in the wrong drawer for 6 full weeks. As the journalist Joan Didion once wrote, we tell ourselves stories in order to live, but sometimes the story we're telling ourselves is the one we tell instead of living. I'd been telling myself the story of a functional, professional relationship. I'd been telling it very convincingly. I should get some kind of award for how convincingly I told it. And now it's 3 a.m., and I'm on the phone with you. And the story is done. Now I just have to figure out what's true. I don't know what I'm going to do, Jess. I don't know what any of this means on his side. I have evidence. I have quite a lot of evidence, as I think you'll agree, but evidence isn't certainty. He might be this way with me because he considers me a particularly compatible colleague, and that's the end of it. He might have no idea. He might have no idea, or he might have some idea, the way he said yes. Someone did in that elevator. I keep coming back to that. I think, and this is the part I couldn't have said 2 hours ago, but I'm going to say it now because it's 3 a.m., and something about 3 a.m. makes things feel possible. I think he knows I notice. I think he might notice me noticing, and I think that might matter to him, which is terrifying, and also the most awake I've felt in 3 months. So here's where I am. It's 3 in the morning. I'm in love with a man who is constitutionally quiet and runs on very few words and only softens, when I'm around. I have been watching this happen for 93 days, and I have been refusing to call it what it is. It is what it is. I'm going to have to do something about it. I don't know what yet. I don't know when, but I know that I'm going to walk into that building on Monday, and it's going to be completely different from every other Monday that came before it. Thank you for staying on the phone, Jess. Thank you for not hanging up. You're welcome. For what it's worth, he's in love with you too. Go back to sleep.